So thank you, Paris, for the introduction. Greetings, everyone. Before I start, I just want to say, as I look out into these blinding lights, look out at everyone, that I, like all speakers who get up on the stage, am nervous as hell. So thank you all in advance for bearing with me, for laughing at my really lame jokes, and for joining me on this ride. So let's get this ball going, or this ball rolling. My name is Glen, and I am here today to talk to you about the most exciting part of working with browsers, a topic that will literally make you shout with joy, and I can tell that you are all super eager to hear about this stupendous, amazing, and totally riveting focus subsystem. Yeah? Yeah? Woo! Wow, that was pretty good. I had a whole section in here like, you could do better, everybody cheer again, but you did pretty good there. All right, so I know this isn't the most glamorous thing we could be discussing today, but sometimes we have to go a little bit down into the weeds. We have to take a long, hard look at the tools that we are given as web developers, and we need to ask, could it be better? And that's what I want to do today with the focus subsystem, and specifically how we interact with the focus subsystem programmatically via JavaScript. So we're going to dive into focus, what it is, how it works, and we're going to ask, is it doing enough for us? Does it work well? Does it meet the needs of the developers? Could it do more to be better? So in order to answer these questions, we need to know exactly what we are talking about. So I want to be very clear on this point. When I speak about focus, I am not talking about this. As cute as this little guy is, we're not here to talk about focus in terms of attention. We're not talking about, blink and marquee elements. Instead, we're talking about this. This is a much worse reaction than the kitten photo. So fields and elements is what we're talking about, where input is directed. When we press a key on our keyboard, focus is the system that directs that keystroke to our form, and specifically to our field. So when I press the G key here, the focus system ensures that the G appears in the correct place. Specifically, focus, as it relates to user interfaces, is the process by which the computer decides what part of the user interface receives any human interaction, be it a mouse click, a keystroke, or any other type of user input, including accessibility devices. For any given input, the computer must decide where in all of its interfaces that input is being directed to. And once it determines where the input is being targeted at, it needs to send it there. I call this the focus flow, and it kind of works like this, right? We press a key, and the keyboard reports to the operating system a keystroke occurred. The operating system determines what key was pressed. Next, the operating system then determines where the user is currently targeting their input at. More precisely, which window is the focus. If the browser is the current window focus, it tells the browser about the keyboard press. The browser then does exactly what the operating system just did, but it does it within itself, right? So it determines which window or tab within the browser is currently targeted to receive the input. Once the browser has determined which window or tab has the focus, it finds the associated top-level DOM document for that window or tab. The DOM document tracks which specific element in the DOM is currently targeted to receive input. It does this in a property called ActiveElement. Whenever focus is changed in a document, ActiveElement is updated. So the browser looks at ActiveElement, and it knows to deliver our keystroke to that element. This is the focus flow, the series of focus decisions at every level, from the operating system level to the application level to the document level. The ActiveElement, along with the focus and blur methods, and the four events, focus, blur, focus in, and focus out, these make up the focus subsystem that we know and, I don't want to say love, but we use today. These 7 pieces, this is everything the browser programmatically exposes to us to understand focus and to manipulate it. That's it in its entirety, and that's what we're going to talk about today with the focus subsystem. So I'm going to take a long draw of water. Bear with me. So the focus subsystem was first formally added to the document object model specification level 1 in January of 1998 with a few tweaks a few years later. And unsurprisingly, the focus subsystem hasn't changed significantly since then. And that's fine. It's a 20-year-old API, and it does its job, or does it? So say that you are an incredibly dashing web developer named Glen, and you need to write a web component that wraps a single field for entering a username, something like this, right? And your customer comes to you and they say they want the enter key to advance the focus to the next field. So our code might look like this. And a note here, I am using a library called Zeph.js to define the web component. Zeph.js is a tiny and powerful way to write web components super easily. You can check it out at zephjs.com. So anyways, back to our story here, right? So we have a customer that wants a web component for entering a username and that they can reuse. And it must advance the focus when enter is pressed. So here's our code again. I'm going to go through this pretty quick, so just bear with me. So we import what we need from Zeph.js. And then we define our myUserField component. So with Zeph.js, you provide the name of the component you are defining and a function that describes the detail of the new component. Within this definition function, we define our HTML content for our component, and we tell our component how we want to handle the key up event in the input element. The key up event is what we are watching to know when enter is pressed, right? So that's it. That's our code. That's our admittedly simple web component definition for our username field. Once defined, anytime myUserField element is used within our HTML document, this code is going to be used. So by now, most of you have noticed this line right here. This is where we want to put the code that will change focus when the enter key is pressed. But there is a big problem here. With our current focus subsystem, in order to advance the focus from one element to the next, we use the element focus method. Element focus is executed on the element we want to give the focus to. But then how does our web component know what element it wants to advance the focus to? A web component is built to actively not know what exists outside of it. So using the current focus subsystem, we actually have no easy way to just tell the focus to advance to the next place. This is the first problem I want to call your attention to with the current focus subsystem. There exists no programmatic way to advance focus. Now, some of you are thinking that, Glen, you should probably just walk the tree, and you can start at the current element and locate the next element which can receive focus, and you can advance to that. That's super easy. Well, this brings up the second problem with our current focus system. What makes an element able to receive focus? What indicates something is focusable? And there are some very easy answers here, right? If an element is an input tag, or a select tag, or a link or an anchor, or a button tag, or a text area, or, and this was a new one to me, the first summary child of a details element, or it's content editable, except if it's disabled, or the tab index is equal to -1, or it's hidden, or it's within a disabled field set, or a disabled form, or it's otherwise not visible, or it's a NORT, or I mean, there's so much I could keep going on. See, determining what is focusable is really hard. And even more problematic is that it's incredibly inconsistent across different browsers. Chrome might handle a disabled select element differently than Firefox does. And that doesn't even begin to take into account the ARIA attributes, right? Which they're pretty comparatively new in the focus space. And they didn't account for them at all 20 years ago when they built the focus subsystem. ARIA has huge implications on focus and focus traversal. And I am actually not very versed in ARIA, so I'm not going to say a ton about it, but it's a big part of this question. Understanding what allows focus and what doesn't is very tricky, and it's full of literally thousands of edge cases. So someone even made this lovely chart. This compares all the ways an element can be focusable and all the edge cases and all the browser differences that you have to deal with. I tried to shrink this down and get it on one slide, but it would be 16 stories high on these monitors if I did it. It's just crazy long. Of course, we can all go to the specification, and that should be super easy to understand, right? Yeah? So section 6.4 of the HTML specification details the focus subsystem. And here's what it says about how to determine if an element is focusable. And so I was going to read this aloud verbatim. I suspect half of you would have left immediately. But honestly, I mean, if you just look at it, it's complicated and it's confusing. And even if you read the whole thing and you get down to this last line right here, this basically says that browsers can make anything they want be focusable or not at any time. So trying to determine what is focusable is not something we really should be in the business of doing as developers. Smarter people have tried to do this, and every single time they try to do this, they get it wrong. So essentially, we have two problems that I mentioned, right? We have no easy way to programmatically advance the focus or actually programmatically remove the focus backwards. We also have no easy way to determine what can receive the focus, what is focusable if we wanted to walk the tree. And the really annoying thing about this, about these two problems, is that internally in the browser, both of these problems are already solved. This is just not exposed. The focus subsystem today is mostly a passive thing. We can read it, we can tell where the focus is and when it changes, and we can direct it if we know exactly where to direct it. And this is okay, but it's not enough. It's not enough for modern web development. This is a 20-year-old API, and it's really starting to show its age. My web component example there, it's only one small slice, one small example of the problems we are facing with focus. 20 years ago, we hadn't even begun to envision all the things we would want or need to do with the web. And as we continue to move the needle of what can be done in a browser, focus will continue to become more and more of a pain point for developers. But I think that we can solve these problems. I believe we can make focus better. We can make it more powerful and easier to work with, and we can make focus help us do what we need to do. And all of that begins by exposing 3 simple functions. First, we need to expose that method that determines if something can receive the focus. Second and third, we need to expose the methods to move the focus forward or backwards, regardless of where the focus currently is. And consider what other focus things we could expose or add to make focus better. What about a function to trap or limit focus to a particular container? Meaning that focus would cycle through the focusable elements in that container, but never out of it until told otherwise. This is especially useful in dialog boxes. What about a programmatic way to order the focusable elements in a four-set order, right? Sure, we have tab index to do that, but wouldn't a function that takes an array of elements and does the ordering for us programmatically be really helpful? And there are other things we could be doing to make focus more understandable, lots more. What if we had a previous active property or a history array to track what was previously focused? That could be useful. Or a programmatic way to set an element as the first element to get the focus once the page is loaded. That might be nice. And there are probably other things I haven't considered. All of these functions and properties, they can make focus so much more useful, so much more better. We just need the courage to make the changes. So let's get some more water. So, like any good developer with a new idea, I set out to address the shortcomings of Focus by writing a new library. Obviously, I didn't want to try and write my own isFocusable method, so naturally I did what we all do on the internet. I stole one. The tabbable library is written by David Clark, and it has a passable isFocus definition, but it does not take into account a lot of the edge cases, especially around different browsers. But it's passable for what I needed to do, so I used that to get started. And from there, I added a global object called Focus Manager for housing my new Focus functions. But as I was writing my code, I started wondering, why was I doing this in the first place? Why isn't this something the browsers just natively have? Isn't this something everyone would want? Isn't a better Focus system something everyone deserves? Surely there must be a way to help everyone. So let me tell you about how I tried to change the HTML specification. First, as most of you may be aware, there are actually two separate governing bodies maintaining the HTML standard at the same time. We have the W3C and we have the WhatWG. And each of them work on the specification independent of one another at the same time. One might think that's not such a great idea, and it really, really wasn't. So, in May of 2019, so 3 or 4 months ago, both the W3C and the WhatWG, they sign an agreement to work together, and they decide that the HTML specification work is going to be done entirely in the WhatWG. And we finally have a single body overseeing the HTML standard, and everyone is super happy. Hooray, cheers, right? Yeah. Now, let us say again that you're an incredibly dashing, but not super popular or well-known web developer, and you want to propose some changes to the HTML specification. How do you do that? To start, you would probably Google something like how to propose changes to the HTML standard. And surprisingly enough, the first hit you might get would be the W3C process document. Yay, a process document. That sounds like great fun, right? It was not. Seriously, it is an awful thing to have to read. Never, ever read that document. But if you were persistent, you might eventually find something called the Web Platform Incubator Community Group, or the WICG. The WICG was formed in 2015 to allow people like you and I to make proposals. So this sounds exactly like what you're looking for, right? So you write up your idea, and you submit it to the WICG discourse group for discussion. But things go really slowly in that process. A few people read it, but none of them really seem to care. And right around that time, the aforementioned agreement between the W3C and the WhatWG comes down. And suddenly, you realize that you need to get your proposal in front of the WhatWG eyeballs, not the WICG eyeballs. What was I thinking? But what you don't realize is that both of these processes have the same fundamental flaw. See, the process for submitting the proposal is pretty easy, but the process for getting anyone to look at it is, or consider it for that matter, is incredibly hard. In order for your proposal to get any kind of response, you are first required to sell it. And not everybody is good at selling. I am not good at selling. The WhatWG process specifically requires you to find and convince browser manufacturers, these are the people who write Chrome and Firefox and Edge and Safari, you have to convince them that your idea is worthy. And that's really hard, especially if you're an incredibly dashing, but not very popular or well-known web developer named Glen. So you do what you think is the right thing. You do what you think is best, and you make a tweet, and you write a few articles, and you post to Reddit and Hacker News, and you promote. You do literally everything you can think of, but still, eyeballs are hard to find. So you decide to take your idea on the road. And you tell the best developers in the world about your idea. Hi, everybody. I have an idea. And that's called pandering, just in case anyone's keeping track. You take a room full of great minds and you tell them about the Focus Traversal API proposal. This is my proposal to make Focus better. A formal proposal to the HTML specification. This proposal formally introduces the concepts of Focus Traversal to solve the problems we discussed earlier about making Focus easier to programmatically use. In the proposal, I suggest a set of additions to move Focus forward. This includes creating the top-level window property called Focus Manager and using that to expose a series of properties and methods for working with Focus Traversal. It contains, as previously described, functions for determining what is focusable, functions for incrementing and decrementing focus, and a host of other focus-related tasks to make everyone's lives easier. This is the proposal that I have submitted to the WICG and the WhatWG, and I've worked to get it promoted in both of those channels. And now I am telling all of you fine folks about it. I have even fleshed out my original library, and I've made a working polyfill for the proposal that you can use today to shim all of these cool and useful Focus functions into your applications until we can get an actual implementation in the browsers. Unfortunately, though, actual implementation is a long, long way away. As I've said, the WhatWG process for enacting change requires you to convince browser manufacturers on your own that your idea is worthy of their time. And I can count on 0 hands the number of browser manufacturers I know how to talk to. But there is hope. You can help me. I need people to comment on the proposal on the WICG or the WhatWG and get involved in this process. I need people to download the polyfill and try it out and find the bugs and help me grow the code. I need people to help come up with ideas for new Focus functionality. I need people to write tests. I need people to be involved. And I especially need people to help spread the word. So to that end, I am going to live tweet from this talk right now while we stand here. It's very exciting watching me use my phone in public. So I am going to send this tweet here. All right, so that's posted to this address and with this text. And I need all of you to go retweet it, and help spread the word with me. So it's posted now. Please do go retweet it. Spread the word. Together, and only together, we can make Focus better, we can make it more powerful, and we can make it easier for everyone. And finally, if you are a browser manufacturer, and this is the best graphic I can come up with for browser manufacturer, apparently. If you're a browser manufacturer, or you have any sway with them, or you know one, or you know how to get in touch with some, come talk to me. Let's figure out together how we can all advance the Focus. That's it. That's all I had to say on the subject. Thank you very much for listening and for retweeting. Please go retweet. And I hope to talk to you all in the coming days about Focus or life, or maybe just about really good beer. So thank you for your focus.